Welcome to The Digital Difference with Scott Gulliver and Oliver Moradi. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 7 of The Digital Difference with me, Scott Gulliver, and Oliver Moradi. How's it going, Ollie?
Yeah, not too bad today, Scott. How are you?
Doing really good. Yeah, doing pretty well, thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, so today, Scott, we're going to be talking about the power of storytelling. Obviously, which you and I have discussed this previously, and we think it's like a really important part of both digital and sort of marketing.
Yeah, it's a great
especially
tool.
using digital content and stuff like that. So, first I'll talk about like why we think it's important. So I think with storytelling, it's sort of relatable to everybody. Everybody reads books. Whenever anybody goes to watch a Netflix TV show or anything like that, they're getting immersed into a narrative, they're getting immersed into a story. So I think that in that sense, as it's relatable to everyone, it's a path that everyone should kind of follow when they're trying to create content, basically, and create sort of marketing content as well. Yeah, it's also more engaging. So if you think about how you would go and view something, say, on Netflix or like Amazon Prime, or if you'd go and have a look at an advert, for instance, straight away, if someone just said, I don't know, if they're selling something, for instance, and they said, we have this car, £6,500, come buy it now. It's not really that engaging, so not many people will be that bothered by it. However, if you look at, like, say, most adverts nowadays, they tell a story behind the product itself before they give you that information straight away. So immediately it's kind of immersive and it just gets people more engaged. I think people are always more engaged because, it becomes more personable. And that is what it is. It is making that advert personal to a person and personal to a person. It is making that advert more personal. So
Sure.
It's trying just to kind of engage with those people and sort of like level with them, get onto the same sort of level. It's really, really good as a business for self-promotion. I think that if you, again, it's going down that personal route, but if you make yourselves more available to the public through storytelling, through telling your story, I think people will engage with you better. And again, it's having that, it's sort of creating that illusion that you have a one-on-one relationship with every single person that views your story. So it kind of gives that off and allows the public to understand who you are, I think, a lot better.
Yeah, it gives a lot of color, doesn't it, I think, to the more like bare bones facts that we deal with every day, especially with kind of most companies where selling services can pretty often be quite dry. It just helps to give some color to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that, like I said, it's that word dry. And I went to a car advert again. I'll go back to a car advert again. You see so many. I mean, I don't know why that sticks into my head, but you see so many of these car adverts. And I'm not going to say any names, but obviously a lot of them first, they have all their cars driving around on a beach or across these roads, and they tell you exactly how it makes you feel and what you're supposed to do and stuff, and what you can do in this car and who it makes you as a person. Whereas if you had like a car company say, this car's good, it will get you from A to B, and it's £5,500 or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a very cheap car, to be honest with you. But people are going to go, oh yeah, that's cool. But, I don't really want it. I want that car that makes me feel like I'm the man or I'm the woman, So
Yeah.
I think, again, like I said, it's sort of connected onto that personal level.
Yeah, I think as well, we're kind of like, we've been brought up on stories, haven't we, as humans? We look for stories to learn. And I think using them as a tool in business just leans on what we all kind of yearn for anyway. We learn things as children, and we do every day based on stories that we hear. And we're pretty hardwired to, find them engaging.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of brings me on to my first point in this, which is storytelling in marketing. Obviously, I think it's a really powerful tool, storytelling, especially when you start marketing. across your business, or even a small business or a big business, doesn't really matter. It is just a really important part. And we've just spoken about this, but I think the main point within marketing is connecting with people on an emotional level. The issue is it's kind of finding your target audience and making sure that audience connects with you and connects with your company, and it's creating the content around that to connect with them. So I think that when you're telling your story, you have to understand who your target audience is, and then create content specific to them to make them become engaged. You're not always not every story is going to appeal to everybody. I mean, you can see that straight away. Let's take TV, for example. There's so many channels with so many different programs on them. The reason for that is that not every program is for one person. If every program was for one person, you'd have, I don't know, BBC One, or that's it, showing the same programs every day, and everybody would be watching those programs, which may have been what it used to be like back in the old days. But now, people want variation, and people are different nowadays. It's more accessible. So, it's finding your target audience out there. It's a big world, there's 6 billion people. Your target audience is still going to be massive. It's just how do you engage with those people?
Yeah, and I think understanding your target market as well it's obviously important for all marketing, but when you're dealing with more facts and figures, I guess you can open that up to a broader audience. I suppose that when you're thinking about storytelling, you can really start to appeal to the niche in your market.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that story starts within your business, and starts within your culture. It's creating that narrative that's going to engage with your market and your target audience. And I think that that story needs to be put into your business, and it needs to be put into your culture. Maybe have an origin story. People love that because people feel like they're more involved within your business. No one likes a secretive company. For instance, look at Tesla. I mean, I swear that Elon Musk shares every single thing that he does every day, and makes it really cool, and makes himself quite personable, and tells his story all the time. And to be honest with you, I see him, and I think, yeah, that's a really cool company, he's sharing a lot. And I go and search for what he's done, and you look at his background, you look at his story, and it's incredible. And he's very open about sharing what he's done and who he is. And I think, again, that's just, for me already, you can see just from me, that's getting me engaged straight away with that kind of person. Having that sort of timeline of where you were to how you've got to where you are, and people really like that, and it kind of gives you that brand loyalty.
It's a great way for startups as well to differentiate against some of the bigger companies, isn't it, in their market? When startups are entering a market against some of the bigger players, it can be pretty daunting, but it's a great opportunity to use some of that kind of personal story and some of those early days kind of insights that can really help to set them apart and make them feel like a real personal brand for people.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings me on to my next point about making that story your brand. I think that if you, not even making that story your brand, but incorporating that story into your brand. So it makes, I think, having a story, having that sort of background, origin story, like I said, having a timeline, and putting that as part of your brand makes it personal, like you said. So it automatically gets incorporated into your brand, and it makes you who you are, and it makes your company who it is. So it gives it its own identity in a sense.
Yeah.
And people can relate to something that has an identity more than they can relate to just a company that they can see a billboard on, or like a sign on the side of the wall. Like, I don't know if you ever drive into like a big city and you just see a company, an insurance company with a random name. You don't know anything about it, and you don't want to know anything about it, do you, really?
Yeah.
But I mean, they don't market in that sort of sense. They don't make their brand. Whereas you look at a company like Tesla, I've never seen a Tesla building before, but I know their brand, I know who they are, and I know that's the power of storytelling.
Yeah, and if the story really resonates with your customers on an emotional level, then they're much more likely to feel quite personally involved, aren't they? And to kind of rally behind what you're doing.
100%. I think this brings us on quite nicely to like gathering data on your target audience. Google does this very well, and I think they can do it for you, but don't do it in a sense of analytics. You don't need to do that much work into that, but it's more going out and finding out who your target audience is, what they like, and then creating content around that, making your content more personable, and sort of aiming at that target audience. It's super important to do that, I think, because that's how you're going to get people engaged. If you try and make content that's sort of generic and vague, has a story, but it's not really specific, and like you said before, Scott, it's not really niche, I think that you'll have an issue with actually connecting with people. And I think that in that sense, you're going to have a problem with people connecting to your company and identifying with your company.
Right. Yeah. I mean, people, if they are in the middle of the road, they're not really looking to strongly align with the middle of the road, are they? It's those companies that might seem a little bit more out there and pushing the boundaries somewhat, but the people that are already in that same mindset and that really resonate with those stories are really going to feel, really attached to that company.
Exactly. And, you can see that with nowadays how people kind of market themselves in terms of, I think it was Patagonia who have done it, who like their brand is kind of like, we create clothing, or I can't remember exactly what their brand is, but it's something like, we create clothing. We don't damage the environment. We don't, and this, they kind of tell this story, everything's clean, everything's ethical. And it kind of aims at that lower end, like sort of audience. But, let's talk about another company who in the same area as, I don't know, North Face. Do they kind of do the same sort of messaging? I don't think they do. So, and that's kind of like, so as a person, if you're a person who's really passionate about the environment and keeping everything safe, which a lot of people are at the moment, creating that story around how you operate immediately gets that sort of loyalty from people because they connect on that certain level. Whereas if you're, I don't know, I'm sure North Face do, I'm not saying they don't, but they might have just said, we're clean, we don't damage the environment with our materials, we're ethical, but I'm sure they don't put that into their statement, when they don't tell that story as well as Patagonia do. So, that's why Patagonia is known for it and probably has more of a brand loyalty than North Face would in that to those kind of people.
Yeah, and beyond brand, it's just another reason for people to choose them, isn't it? And for people to buy products. Beyond price and everything else, they might even be a more expensive company, but if the message behind it is good enough and something they really resonate with, and it doesn't even have to be something that's necessarily what's seen as kind of socially good, like helping the environment. It could just be something that really resonates with their personality, with the customer's own personal story. That'll be enough of a differentiator for them to go with that company.
Absolutely. So it's really important to kind of gather that data on your target audience and create that content around that audience. And you can do, and also like mini ads are really good in this sense to sort of back up your story as well. People like visuals. So when you are marketing, back it up with other bits of content as well. Throw it in there. It doesn't need to be long, but sort of like a quick 6-second video so people are constantly reminded as to why or what you do and why you do it, and constantly back up your story with little bits of mini ads. I think it really, really helps there.
Yeah, on a social platform as well, those mini ads for people who really identify with the stories, they're going to be sharing the hell out of that sort of stuff, which is just fantastic from a marketing point of view, and getting it even wider to their own networks and further afield than the company would by themselves.
100%, and I think this is the main outlet for these mini ads, like you said, Scott, is the social aspect of things. You've got your Twitter, your Facebook, your Instagram, your LinkedIn. Let's be honest, like those are probably the biggest marketing tools that anybody can use nowadays. So telling your story through there and backing your story up, most people are going to see your story from some form of advertising that you've already done as your main key advertising, whether you've done it through TV, whether you've done it on your website through video. People are going to pick it up some way, but having those mini ads through these social media channels just to back up that story. And people are on social media constantly. So it's just a quick reminder. They don't want to, they're going to be scrolling through their feeds. So they don't want to sit there and listen to a 10-minute video about how you're amazing, but they probably seen and picked up bits and pieces from just being on the web or being immersed in the digital world, that they're going to want to have just a little reminder, or you're going to want to send out just a little reminder to them. I think customer-led storytelling is really, really important as well. People really engage with stories from their peers more than they engage with the story from a company. So you've got to kind of think that if you're a company and you tell a story about how you built a product, for instance, and it can do this, this, and this, and this, you're going to be dubious because you're going to think, well, actually, you're going to say that because this is a product you've created. If you think about when you buy anything, you want to look at a comment section to see what people have rated this product as. And I think that's the same with sort of marketing. It's having that peer feedback. I've used this with my mum every day, for instance. I don't know what the product is, but she loves it. People immediately going to go, oh yeah, okay, well, this average Joe is using it and it's great. So I think it's really, really key when sort of telling that story is to get that like customer led.
Yeah.
Follow trends and be open about your company and how it operates. I think that keeping up to date with modern trends is really important with storytelling. You've already got story, but it's a story, and at the end of the day, it can be slightly adapted to follow a trend. This is business. At the end of the day, you're still trying to target your audience. If trends change, your story needs to change, not change massively, but your story needs to adapt to that, focus at that new trend or to focus at that new user audience that you're looking at. And maybe you as a company will change. So, you have to also change your story in that sense. So it's constantly update your story and keep your company open about how you operate. I think that if you're continuously open about who you are, continuously telling your story and updating, your story is ongoing. As long as you're going, your story is going. So, just keep yourself open and keep your company open and keep talking.
I guess as well, beyond just potentially changing with the trends, it's about making sure that you're always looking for opportunity as well to align your story to whatever the current situation is. COVID's a great example where we've had a big impact in society. Suddenly there are lots of companies with a lot of values that align pretty closely with the new world that we're in. And it's just about finding opportunity in pretty much any situation that's happening, and actually there's almost always some way to align your story to it.
Yeah, 100%, Scott. And like, look at wellbeing initiatives, for instance. This is a key example. How many companies now are promoting about wellbeing? And I know we spoke about this before in a previous podcast, but wellbeing is massively being advertised at the moment everywhere, and people are telling a story about how they incorporate wellbeing within their company. And straight away that's just a prime example of what you've just said. It's constantly happening, and companies are adapting to new trends and are adapting their story to sort of follow those trends. And obviously wellbeing, I shouldn't really say is a trend, but at the moment it's going to kind of trend because people need to feel good at the moment based on the current situation. The next thing really is to sort of focus on dark social. And I know dark social sounds kind of scary when I say it. It's not like dark web or anything like that. Dark social is more of your SMS channel. So WhatsApp. Think about how many people use WhatsApp and SMS services, Google Chat, for instance. People post a hell of a lot of links through these sort of like dark social sites, and not many. So, you can't really track the sort of content that people are looking at. I think it's really important to kind of like try and get your story out through these dark social channels. So maybe explore how you would use those to spread your story. So maybe if you had a WhatsApp channel, a WhatsApp number, for instance, for your company, you can kind of share your story through these social channels just by kind of like sending it out to a few people. It's a new way of marketing and not many people probably do this yet, but it's just something to explore.
It's almost like the newsletter idea of 2020, isn't it? It's the old school newsletter where you reach out to customers who might have signed up to you before. But things like WhatsApp, again, that they're great in the fact that they are social platforms, and you can so easily share something as a company that then gets shared around beyond that and forwarded around to contacts. So yeah, it's really key to kind of create engaging content on those platforms for sure.
Absolutely, and companies have started doing it, but it's not a big thing at the moment. And I think people, obviously, there's an issue around privacy and stuff like that, you know, and sending it out those ways. But if it's kind of more, if you can get that story out to sort of share it and get people to share that story through these dark social sites, you know, it's not you going out and cold calling people. I think that obviously that's going to turn people off from your product more than anything else, but trying to like encourage your audience to share that message through like these dark social channels would be amazing. I think it'll be really, really impactful and really powerful.
Sure.
And another thing that's sort of new as well is sort of VR. And we talk about connecting with people on a one-to-one basis, and you know, having that personal, emotional level. But you can do that with VR like it's never been done before. You know, I mean, you know, you can sit in a virtual room, or sit in a virtual company, for instance, and have a company within a digital world, and allow that person to sort of experience digital through that way. And I think, you know, that's kind of manipulating senses in a way, and making that person feel like they're immersed more into your story and immersed more into your company than anything else. So it's definitely something to also look at especially when marketing.
Yeah, I think the technology is definitely available today to make experiences pretty engaging, and that can only help in terms of trying to tell your story. There are basic things just like getting videos up or animations that might tell your story in a nice kind of succinct and simple way. But as you say, VR and kind of online communities, those types of technologies can be a really great way of immersing people more directly in the story that you're trying to tell.
Yeah, Scott, and that brings me on nicely to my next point, which is storytelling in digital content. I know we kind of talked about marketing and how digital we kind of touched on how digital can help that, but I more want to talk about the actual storytelling within the content itself. You can use a range of digital tools to tell your story, like across multiple platforms. So, you know, we're talking about your social medias, talk about web, talk about video. And it's not just about creating a story in one of those platforms, it's creating a story across all of them. And I think the best thing that you can do, especially when creating digital content, is to try and link those different platforms together while telling the story, to encourage people to go to different platforms. So maybe you start with a video, and I know it's not accessible to everybody, but most people are on most of these platforms nowadays. Most people have a smartphone or a tablet, and if they don't, then they're probably not really going to be interested in what you've got to say anyway. That is the way of the world. We are very digital nowadays. So, you know, let's say you start on your website, and you start with your story on your website, and then you can go click this link or click the story to learn more, and it goes to your Instagram, and then you can kind of go to your Facebook channel, and then you can go back to a video, for instance. So it's kind of telling that story through a range of different platforms, and just kind of linking them together to get that consumer, or to get your target audience sort of more engaged within your platforms and more engaged on the different levels of your business. I think that kind of storytelling would enable people to get really involved with your business as well, and it gives it a bit of fun because it's allowing you to jump between different things. Don't get me wrong, not everybody would be into that as well. So you could just host all of those things on your website. You could just host all those links onto your social media pages, but you just need to be a bit creative in terms of how you're going to approach this way of telling your story through these digital channels.
Yeah. The web, I think, is a fantastic platform for this, actually, in terms of being able to quickly create and also deliver content to users, especially that content that's rich and engaging and based around those experiences that you want to show. especially kind of creating interactive media as well that people can really play around with and make use of. The web is just a really suitable platform for this these days.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said before, it's making it interactive, and that's exactly what you need to do to get people engaged. Get people engaged with your story, and make it interactive. If you just like sit there and tell a story, I mean, yeah, it's great reading a book, but imagine if you could be part of that book. Imagine if you could be part of that story within that book and make yourself become part of the story itself. And I think that's why obviously computer gaming is such a massive thing, isn't it? Like video games, because you can actually live through that person within that book or within that game, and it helps you become more immersed into the actual story itself.
Yeah, and platforms like Unity as well, getting developers together to think about how you could best create your content. You may be able to create through platforms like Unity and other game engines, like a small little game, a small little interactive demo that really helps to tell your story. Like you said, games do it really well. So leveraging some of that good behavior into a small little demo that you can host directly on your website that could be used on mobiles for people out and about. There's loads of opportunity out there to really use the media to really help shape your story.
100%, yeah, absolutely, and I think that's where web apps come in as well. I mean, a lot of people use web apps and stuff now to make things more engaging. You see this a lot in learning digital content as well, obviously, because people need to become engaged to learn about things, and so storytelling is a key part of that. And I think that that can be used across everything. And like you said, Scott, with gamification, for instance, gamification always helps with it's proven it always makes people more engaged with everything, because like you said, it's very, very interactive. So straight away the mind is connected to whatever it's doing because it's immersed completely into the actual story itself.
Yeah,
so it's a really good way of actually, like you said, it's a really good way of actually sort of, again, going back to that marketing side of things, of getting people engaged within your story. Sure. We spoke about it earlier, but about dark social. So explore different ways and that you could use WhatsApp and SMS. I did say before about sort of spreading that message. So it could be sort of maybe like a clickbait to your story, for instance, just to sort of send out to a few people within your network, and then hopefully that message then spreads. You just need a quick message to kind of get that hook out there and to reel people in, and you want people to spread that message for you instead. Obviously, again, cold calling and spam messaging, people hate it. So you want people to spread your messages for you. So you want your audience to actually be your marketers as well.
And clickbait is an interesting term as well. Obviously, it's a bad practice, but I think it's all about creating content that's instantly engaging, and that doesn't need to be a title that's nothing. The old clickbait where you'd have a title that's nothing to do with the content you actually click through to, but having a really snappy kind of thing that shines within scrolling through your feed is important to be able to get it shared widely.
Absolutely, yeah, and yeah, I say clickbait, but it's more about having that hook. Let's call it hook instead.
Yeah,
because it's trying to it's like that hook and reel, because it's trying to get people engaged within that really short message to your story. And like you said, with clickbait, it often goes to something that's a bit spammy and has nothing to do with what you're saying. But you want this to be a snippet of your story that's really going to get people engaged. It's like reading the back of a book, for instance. That is exactly what it is. So that's kind of that's explore using those kind of like dark social sites. I think another important part of your story is to sort of amplify using imagery and video. The general public react better to visual aids more than they do text, and obviously I think everyone knows that when you read a document, you can switch off, your eyes can wander, you can get bored. Visual aids are really, really important, imagery, video, audio, even hearing aids are pretty good for this kind of thing as well.
I guess it really helps to quite literally paint a picture as well, doesn't it, in terms of like cement an image in people's minds.
Definitely. I mean, this is a true stat, right? people process an image 60,000 times faster than they do when reading text. 60,000 times
That's amazing.
faster. If you actually think about time as being your currency and the amount of time that you have within an advert, obviously you're going to want to use the thing that gives your information out 60,000 times faster than a bit of text. So if you sit there with a video that reads out a few subtitles on the page, like, we can do this, this, and this for you, no one's really going to be engaged. But if you have a video that's going on for about 10 minutes, your content is 60,000 times more valuable than what it would be if it was text on a page. And that's kind of that's kind of the reason why people search for these visual aids. People search for more of this content, and it's being used more because it is more effective. So obviously it's kind of using those to boost your message and boost your story, and also trying to think about how your story and your UX, so if you're building a website, can work hand in hand. Right. Let's take, most companies have an about us or an our story on their webpage. Why not make that your main page? And then why not make it such a linear approach that it can go to, we started doing this. I know everybody wants a quick click through, and you can always have that within your UX where you can go, send me to this bit. But if you start off with our story, this is where we started, and then it can slowly come down to this is where we are with all of our products, people might be a bit more engaged to actually read that story. I'm not saying it's definitely going to work. I'm just saying it's an idea that you can have about kind of telling that story through to your website. It's just a new approach, but it's something to definitely look into.
It's that type of thinking as well, that thinking completely, as you said, was turning it on its head and putting that first and foremost before even your products come along.
Yeah, exactly.
It's definitely worth testing and approaching carefully, but it might be something that really helps to set you apart from the thousands of competitors that have websites that are look very much the same, and yours is now pretty different and actually engaging with customers. So definitely leverage things like A/B testing for that sort of thing, and carefully kind of develop it with kind of an agile approach. But yeah, for sure, that type of thinking can be super valuable in just like experimenting with some of this stuff.
100%, and that's what it's all about. Just kind of experiment with your story, experiment with your digital content within that story, and try and find a good way that's that's going to reach out to your target audience and reach out to your market. I think that if you did do that immediately, like we spoke about before, having that hook and reel sort of message at the beginning to get people engaged straight away, to then go, oh well, I wonder what this is about, and before you know it, they've been on your site for 10 minutes. Your SEO is going up, your site's then getting more and more views, and it's getting more time spent on certain pages and stuff like that, and it just allows your rank to build up, say within a Google search and stuff like that. So it all helps, just getting that person engaged within your story just really, really helps every part of your digital aspect. And everyone is different in how they become engaged, so it's sort of understanding what tools are available to you, whether it's using sort of animations, whether it's using sort of learning tools, whether it's using, standard Adobe tools like making videos through Premiere Pro, updating visuals through Photoshop or Illustrator. It's just understanding what's out there for you and what's best for you and what's best for your market. Yeah. And utilizing those as best you can to kind of reach out to these and tell the story through these different aids. I think that you should use as many as you can, because people want to continuously be updated through different channels. If you keep sending someone out a video every 2 minutes, eventually they're going to switch off. So you need to kind of switch it up to keep them engaged. But keep your story the same, and try and like use those different digital channels to keep telling the same story.
That's awesome. Yeah, totally.
So, and that kind of brings me on to my last point, and it's just a quick point, and it's not really anything to do with digital, but it's still around storytelling. And I still think it's really important if you're a business. And I think it's storytelling within networking. especially face to face. And Scott, this is something you and I have been doing quite a lot recently.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a good start to have a story as sort of a fallback on. You know, as soon as that small talk starts to dry up, you need to kind of promote who you are and what you do. So it's having that story as a backup straight away for when someone asks you that all important question. So who are you and what do you do?
Yeah.
Having that story behind you and having that, and again, we'll use it again, that hook and real sort of message straight away to kind of get people engaged. And you need to really understand that person who's in front of you before you do that. Your story will change depending on the person, because the person will be different, and who you're networking with isn't always going to be your target audience. So it's kind of understanding and trying to get a bit of a gauge of who that person is before you jump in with your story to get them involved and get them engaged with you and your company. This is purely on a networking basis, and don't get me wrong, like, it's good to market to your target audience, but when you're networking, you're not always networking to your target audience. So it's how you kind of sell yourself, sell your product, and storytelling. Really good with that.
Yeah. And it helps across the board as well, doesn't it? Not just for clients that you're potentially going to be working with, but it helps tell your story and make you attractive to everyone from potential investors to potential employees or partner companies. It really helps to, again, go back to start, like, bring some color into what you're doing and make it a little bit more than just a pretty dry, bare bones numbers company.
Precisely. And, you know, if you look at it that way as well, if you tell a really good story, that person who you've been speaking to might share your story with other people because they've been really, really engaged and really inspired by what you've said. They'll go out there and they'll say, actually, have you heard about this company? They're doing this, this, and this, and they started it by this. You know, it's having that sort of like that wow factor about you and telling a really good story that might allow them to promote through the network. And, you know, as that network spreads, your story spreads. So it's a really good thing just to have that initial story. And you have to remember that conversations flow more easily between people. So you don't need to market it as well as you would with a piece of digital content, you know?
Yeah.
You don't need to be there with a few specific words and then that's it, it's done. You know, make it personable. You are a person in the end of the day. So, you know, interact normally with these people and kind of, you know, just tell your story, but make it flow naturally. You've got more time to play around with it when you're in a one-on-one conversation. And, you know, just kind of take your time and take the same approach as you would with sort of marketing and digital content. So not in sense of, and I've just said that, you know, it's different. So I mean more of the core principles behind your digital marketing. So, you know, connect people on an emotional level, for instance, make it personable to them. You know, maybe start with like a timeline of who you are and that sort of tell that story as to how far you've come. You know, people love a rags to riches story, for instance, and a nice success story, basically. So
I think this is where actually being a bit more vulnerable can actually help in this side as well. I think a lot of, especially newer companies, can find it really hard to talk about what they're doing to people. I know we did at the start. You know, it feels like you're opening up a pretty vulnerable part of yourself, but actually it can form part of a great story to get others on board to want to help you or to promote you, or even just, you know, to start following what you're doing. So it can be a great opportunity to just start talking about that sort of stuff. It really helps to make you feel like a personal company and a kind of personal brand, the people behind your company.
Definitely, yeah, 100%. And you know, you'll find that when you speak to people and you actually say, to be honest with you, we don't really know what we're doing in this situation, but we really want to get to this place and we want to get to that place. People will be more open to helping you, like you said, because you have been honest and you have been open about where you are as a company. So immediately it makes you a person and it makes your company have an identity. Oh, well, they're actually here at this point. They're not this all-star, all amazing people. We don't see them as like this threat. We see them as a fellow, you know, peer that we want to kind of help. And people will react to that better than if you're like closed off and looking like you know everything. You know, fair enough. If you're a much bigger company, then you know, you might not want to take that approach as much. However, when you're a smaller company, it definitely helps. And yeah, it's kind of also making you a bit humble in your approach
Sure.
to different things. You know, people respond more to that than they would if you're an arrogant person, an arrogant company. And the last thing I'd say is just kind of put yourself into your opposition's shoes, or whoever you're speaking to. Like, put yourself into their shoes. What would you want to hear?
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to want someone, you know, talking up their company constantly, all singing, all dancing. You know, you want someone to be a bit more personable, and explain who they are and their ups and downs. And people, again, will respond better to that.
And this is where not understanding just who your target audience are, but really understanding how they feel and, you know, who they are. And the best companies often come from people who have been, you know, the potential customer once upon a time and found a gap in the market. And they're the best ones to really understand exactly what their customers want because they've been there. So yeah, really thinking about, as you say, putting yourself in their shoes, and hopefully having been there once upon a time will help you to tell a story that really connects with them.
Yep, absolutely.
Great. So I think we're about there, aren't we, Ollie?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's all I have to say about storytelling.
Yeah, I think, you know, as we said, it's a fantastic tool, not used as much as it could be. And it's quite an exciting thing to be able to think about within your business, I think.
Definitely, as a digital creative, it's more fun to create around a story than it is just to create around bog standard content that you've been given, and just create something that looks shiny. You know, you want to tell a story, and it makes it more fun for you to create something. So give it a try.
Well, thanks for listening today, everyone. And you can find out more about this episode and all of our other ones at the digitaldifference.show. And look out for the next episode coming up in about 2 weeks. Thanks so much for listening today, and we'll see you soon.
Cheers, guys. See ya.
Thanks for joining us today, and we hope you've enjoyed the episode. We wanted to let you know a little about our digital agency. We design and build killer experiences and apps, and we also put out a bunch of free content to help companies of all shapes and sizes. Head to fluffdigital.com to find out more.